Dragon Age 2 was developed by BioWare and released in 2011. It is an action RPG that won multiple awards. I spent over 50 hours with it, and the whole thing is a bit hollow. Now, before we go any further, let me be clear. I love BioWare RPGs. Hell, I love Dragon Age 2 and its predecessor, and the Awakening expansion game. I've clocked well over 100 hours in Ferelden and the Free Marches. I assure you my fan credentials are well in order. I love Dragon Age, but now I want to criticize it. Dragon Age 2 fundamentally switches the genre from RPG to nearly pure action. Now that's not an unwelcome switch, and to be frank, the first two games in the franchise were already leaning in that direction. Dragon Age 2 feels more like a natural progression of where things were going. Summons, however, are completely dropped. In the first game, rangers and mages could summon powerful creatures, like giant spiders or the undead to fight alongside you. But outside of a separate paid Mabari DLC, you no longer have access to summons in DOA 2, which is too bad and feels like a step backward. No, I don't plan to rag on the game for its simplified combat as most reviewers have. Rather, I'm going to talk about DOA 2's greatest issue: the story, and the world building, or lack thereof. DOA 2 sees you stepping into the boots of Hawk, a male or female character from Ferelden, who is fleeing the Blight, and being chased by Darkspawn. Not to go too deep into Dragon Age 1 lore, but the Blight was when orc-like creatures called Darkspawn rose from caves that lived in, and they sought to basically corrupt or destroy all life on the surface under the leadership of the Archdemon, which was basically just a giant possessed dragon. In Dragon Age 1, the player character, or the hero of Ferelden, defeats the Archdemon and saves the land. But Hawk's story seems to start out halfway through the first game, so he, or she, needs to get the heck out of Dodge. Hawk's family fights past Darkspawn alongside a Ferelden soldier named Aveline, and eventually the party reaches the coast and sets sail for the city-state of Kirkwall. You and your party arrive at Kirkwall, and lo and behold, you are actually a castaway noble. This does betray the idea that you're just a refugee who has to rise up the ranks, but some destiny is to be expected in a BioWare RPG. Your family lineage gets you into the city, and you fight and claw your way through the ranks to become a proper noble, killing plenty of Kunari, bandits, lowlives, and dragons who are mostly just minding their own business. Eventually, you get embroiled in a conflict between Order-obsessed Templars, basically the cops, and potentially dangerous mages, who are sort of like the X-Men mutants a little bit. Your sister, if your choices allowed her to live this long, is one such oppressed mage, so yeah, your choice should be pretty obvious. While that may sound like a decent plot for a 2-hour movie, it does not sound like a good setup for an action RPG that goes heavy on the action. Here is my main question. Who the hell are you supposed to be fighting constantly for a 30 to 60 hour experience in a game with clear emphasis on action but no enemy faction or an obvious villain? Sure, you can make an enemy of the Kunari or the Templars, but you don't have to, and the game has to account for that, which shorthands content in either direction, and these potential enemies are only present in part of the game. I think part of the issue here is the way Dragon Age as a series was conceived. It wasn't attempting to do a BioWare version of Lord of the Rings, the way that Mass Effect is a BioWare version of the Star Wars license that they lost after Knights of the Old Republic. No, Dragon Age takes its cues from Dungeons & Dragons and other tabletop games. In games like that, your characters can simply move through the world and then, here comes a troll, just out of nowhere. Since it is disbelief, and in such an RPG, you can just gin up fights out of thin air. And to be fair, random enemy encounters are common in JRPGs. In DOA 2, you fight giant spiders or dragonlings because you entered into their turf, and some wild animals are territorial. That makes sense. It's incredibly unethical that the game celebrates you fighting and slaughtering small dragonlings who are literally just baby dragons who are fighting to defend their own parents, but BioWare is very used to unethical combat. We should remember the first game starts with you killing a bunch of random wolves. How heroic. No, the real problems start when you encounter humanoid enemies. Why thieves, mercenaries, or lyrium smugglers would decide to fight you to the death repeatedly and randomly is simply baffling. You get into so many fights with random dudes that it makes Kirkwall seem like a war-ridden hellhole, basically like a modern Detroit. I remember playing the first Mass Effect and encountering some gunmen in the Citadel near the nightclub. They never announced themselves, they weren't part of any side quest, they just showed up wanting trouble. I remember thinking, what was that all about? Well, that happens all the time in Dragon Age 2, because, wait for it, Dragon Age 2 has no villain. Okay, I hear you yelling through your screen. Why am I so obsessed with villains? This all goes back to Mass Effect 3 for me. The fight against the Reapers was so iconic. I can go back and rewatch the final battle in London and still feel how high the stakes were. Dragon Age 2 has none of that. It's a game with no enemy, so enemies have to keep getting invented, whether it makes sense for them to or not, leaving each fight wanting. The plot is likewise full of bets getting hedged, because the game has to account for all the paths you may choose. As a digital tabletop experience, Dragon Age 2 may work, but as an action-heavy RPG, it just doesn't. And that's why I don't really get it.
Don't be silly. A dowry would only matter if you were courting him.
Oh, Meryl.
You're courting him!